بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي.
Qur'an, chapter 89, Surah Al-Fajr, also known as the Dawn, by Sayyid Qutb, translation by Muhammad Al-Amrani. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, by the dawn and the 10 nights, by the even and the odd, and the night as it softly treads, is there not in this an oath for those with reason? Have you not seen how your sustainer dealt with Ad, the mighty pillars of Iram, unmatched in all the lands, and with Thamud, who carved the rocks in the valley, and Pharaoh of stakes? They all transgressed throughout the land, spreading corruption far and wide. So your sustainer unleashed upon them a scourge of punishment. Indeed, your sustainer is ever watchful. As for man, when his sustainer tries him and honours him, he says, "My sustainer has honoured me." But when he tests him and restricts his provision, he says, "My sustainer has humiliated me." Nay, but you do not honour the orphan, nor do you encourage feeding the poor. And you consume inheritance greedily, and you love wealth with an overwhelming passion. Nay, when the earth is crushed to dust upon dust, and your sustainer comes with the angels, rank upon rank, and hell is brought near on that day man will remember, but how will that remembrance avail him? He will say, "Oh, would that I had sent forth something for my life." So on that day none will punish as he punishes, and none will bind as he binds. O soul at peace, return to your sustainer, well pleased and pleasing to him. Enter among my servants and enter my paradise. This chapter in its entirety is a call to the human heart, to faith, piety and mindfulness, to awaken and reflect. Yet it weaves through a rich tapestry of tones and images, each scene resonating with its own distinct melody, yet harmonizing into a unified rhythm. In some scenes there is a gentle beauty, serene and tender, as in the soft opening verses that portray the cosmic order with a delicate touch, accompanied by the serene echoes of prayer and worship. By the dawn and the 10 nights and the even and the odd and the night as it softly treads. In others there is a fierce, resounding impact, whether in the imagery or the rhythm, such as the intense and terrifying scene, "Nay, when the earth is crushed to dust upon dust, and your sustainer comes with the angels, rank upon rank, and hell is brought near. On that day will man remember, but how will that remembrance avail him?" Yet there are scenes of tenderness, of contentment, overflowing with peace and tranquillity, where images and sounds blend in perfect harmony, as in the closing verses. "O soul at peace, return to your sustainer, well pleased and pleasing to him. Enter among my servants and enter my paradise." Within these verses are swift references to the downfall of the arrogant and tyrannical, their rhythm balanced between the gentle flow of storytelling and the powerful finality of their destruction. Have you not seen how your sustainer dealt with Ad, the mighty pillars of Iram, unmatched in all the lands, and with Thamud, who carved the rocks in the valley, and Pharaoh, sustainer of stakes? The chapter also highlights the misguided perceptions and values of those without faith, expressed in a unique tone that reflects the chapter's distinct character. As for man, when his sustainer tries him and honours him, he says, "My sustainer has honoured me." But when he tests him and restricts his provision, he says, "My sustainer has humiliated me." The chapter then counters these misconceptions by unveiling the truth of their condition, expressed in a tone that bridges the report of their state with the warning of their fate. "Nay, but you do not honour the orphan, nor do you encourage feeding the poor. You consume inheritance greedily, and you love wealth with an overwhelming passion." This tone serves as a bridge between the exposition of their state and the forewarning of their ultimate destiny. Nay, when the earth is crushed to dust upon dust. From this swift overview, the diverse shades and rhythms of the chapter emerge clearly, each segment of the chapter showcasing a different facet of its aesthetic harmony. Above all, the chapter exemplifies the seamless beauty inherent in the Quranic expression, a beauty that is both familiar and intimate. As for the thematic purposes carried by this harmonious expression, we now turn to them in detail. By the dawn and the 10 nights, by the even and the odd and the night as it softly treads, is there not in this an oath for those with reason? This opening oath encompasses these scenes and creations, imbued with a delicate, intimate spirit. By the dawn, a moment when life gently breathes, rejoicing, smiling, comforting as the world awakens slowly, as if its breaths were a whispered prayer, its unfolding a silent hymn. And by the 10 nights, left unnamed by the Quranic text, though various interpretations exist, whether they are the first 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, or of Muharram, or of Ramadan. Leaving them unnamed casts a subtler, more delicate shadow. These are 10 nights known to God, with a special significance in his sight, suggesting nights with distinct, living spirits, inviting us to sympathize and connect with them through the Quranic expression which gently vibrates with life. And by the even and the odd, a spirit of prayer and worship fills that beloved, intimate atmosphere, resonating with the dawn and the 10 nights. And by the even and the odd, as mentioned in a hadith recorded by Al-Tirmidhi referring to the even and odd units of prayer, a meaning most fitting in this context, where the spirit of humble devotion harmonizes with the tranquil spirit of existence, and the worshipping souls respond to the chosen nights and the radiant dawn. And by the night as it softly treads, here night is a living creature, moving through the universe as though it were a vigilant traveller gliding through the darkness, or a wanderer choosing the night for a distant journey. Oh, the elegance of the expression! Oh, the intimacy of the scene! Oh, the beauty of the rhythm! And oh, the harmony with the dawn, the 10 nights, and the even and the odd. These are not merely words and phrases, they are the gentle breezes of dawn, the dewdrops glistening with fragrance. Or is it the heart's tender whisper, the soft murmur to the soul, the inspiring touch to the conscience? This is beauty, beloved, whispering, gentle beauty. Beauty that surpasses the most eloquent poetic imaginings, for it is creative beauty, simultaneously expressing a profound truth. Then comes the closing remark. Is there not in this an oath for those with reason? A question posed to affirm, indeed, in this is an oath for those endowed with intellect. Indeed, in this is a convincing proof for those with understanding. Yet the interrogative form, though affirming, is gentler in its effect. It resonates with the chapter's soft, whispering tone. As for the subject of the oath, it is concealed within the text, to be revealed by what follows, the theme of tyranny and corruption, and how your sustainer dealt with those who were guilty of these evils. This is a truth bound by that oath, hinted at with a subtlety that suits the chapter's overall delicate touch. Have you not seen how your sustainer dealt with Ad? The mighty pillars of Iram, unmatched in all the lands, and with Thamud, who carved the rocks in the valley, and Pharaoh, sustainer of stakes. The interrogative form in such a context serves to heighten awareness and draw attention. The address is initially directed to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, but it is meant for all who are capable of seeing or reflecting on the fate of those nations, all of which were well known to the first listeners of the Qur'an, as well as testified by the remnants and tales passed down through generations. The act being attributed to your sustainer provides comfort, familiarity and reassurance to the believer, especially those in Mecca who were enduring the tyranny of the oppressors, the might of the tyrants among the polytheists who lay in wait for the message and its followers. In these few short verses, God gathers the fates of the most powerful tyrants known to ancient history. Ad of Iram, which is Ad the First. It is said that they were from the original Arabs or Bedouins who lived in the sand dunes of the southern Arabian Peninsula between Hadramaut and Yemen. They were nomads, living in tents supported by pillars. The Qur'an describes them as strong and formidable. For the tribe of Ad was the mightiest and most distinguished of its time, unmatched in all the lands of that era. And Thamud, who carved the rocks in the valley, Thamud inhabited the region of Al-Hijr, located in the northern Arabian Peninsula between Medina and Syria. They hewed stones into palaces and carved out refuges and caves in the mountains. And Pharaoh, sustainer of stakes, this likely refers to the pyramids which resemble stakes firmly rooted in the ground, solidly built. The Pharaoh mentioned here is most likely Pharaoh of Moses, the arrogant tyrant. These were the ones who transgressed throughout the land, spreading corruption far and wide. And there is no outcome for tyranny except corruption, for tyranny corrupts the tyrant and those who suffer under it alike. It corrupts relationships and associations in every aspect of life, diverting the course of human civilization from its proper, clean and constructive path to another path where human stewardship on earth can never be properly maintained. It enslaves the tyrant to his own desires, for he has no fixed standard to return to, nor does he observe any clear boundary. Thus he himself is the first to become corrupted, assuming a position on earth different from that of a servant. As Pharaoh declared, "I am your sustainer most high," when his tyranny led him astray, causing him to overstep the bounds of a servant, reaching out in detestable arrogance, a corruption beyond all corruption. It also turns the masses into submissive slaves, harbouring deep-seated resentment and bitterness, paralysing their sense of human dignity and their capacity for innovation, which cannot thrive except in an atmosphere of freedom. A soul that is subjugated becomes stagnant and decays, becoming a breeding ground for base desires and sickly instincts, a field for deviance as perception and insight are dulled, and noble aspirations, high spirit, and a yearning for progress and elevation are lost. This, too, is corruption beyond all corruption. Furthermore, it distorts values, standards, and perceptions as they pose a threat to tyrants and tyranny. Thus, there must be falsification of values, tampering with standards, and perversion of perceptions to make the hideous face of tyranny appear acceptable and palatable. Such is the depth of corruption. Thus, when corruption spread unchecked across the earth, the remedy was to cleanse it of this taint. So your sustainer unleashed upon them the scourge of punishment. Indeed, your sustainer is ever watchful, for your sustainer is vigilant, recording their deeds with precision. And when corruption multiplied and overflowed, he poured upon them the scourge of torment, a word that evokes the sting of suffering like the lash of a whip, and its overwhelming flood like the pouring of a relentless storm. Here the sharp pain of chastisement and the engulfing tide of divine wrath converge upon those tyrants who oppressed the land, spreading corruption far and wide. Yet, beyond all these scenes of downfall, there flows a deep serenity into the heart of the believer as he confronts tyranny in any time or place. From the words of the Almighty, "Indeed, your sustainer is ever watchful," there arises a particular tranquility. For your sustainer is there, ever observant, missing nothing, monitoring all that transpires, So let the believer's heart find peace, and let his eyelids close in restful sleep, for his sustainer is ever watchful, ever ready to confront tyranny, evil, and corruption. And thus, here we witness examples of God's will in the matter of the divine call, different from the model presented in Surah Al-Buruj regarding the people of the ditch. The Qur'an, in its timeless guidance, has been and continues to be a source of nurturing for believers, preparing their souls for all circumstances. It brings reassurance in both cases, teaching them to expect both outcomes and entrusting everything to the will of God, who directs it as He pleases. Indeed, your sustainer is ever watchful. He sees, measures and judges according to a precise scale that neither errs nor oppresses, that does not take things at face value but examines their true essence. As for mankind, their scales are faulty, their assessments misguided, for they see only the outward aspects unless they are connected to the divine balance. As for man, when his sustainer tests him by bestowing honour and blessings, he says, "My sustainer has honoured me." But when he tests him by restricting his provision, he says, "My sustainer has humiliated me." Such is man's perception of what God tries him with, be it ease or hardship, abundance or restraint. He is tested by wealth and status, yet fails to recognise that it is a trial, a prelude to the final judgment. Instead, he considers wealth and position as signs of divine favour and election, viewing the trial as a reward and the test as a result. He measures divine honour by the fleeting standards of this worldly life. Similarly, when tested by the restriction of provision, he regards the trial as a punishment, the test as a disgrace, believing that, had God not intended to dishonour him, he would not have restricted his sustenance. In both cases, man errs in his perception and in his estimation. For the expansion or restriction of provision is but a trial from God to his servant, to reveal whether he will show gratitude in blessing or arrogance, patience in adversity or discontent. The reward will come based on what is revealed after the trial. Neither the wealth bestowed nor withheld is the final recompense. The value of a servant in the sight of God is not tied to what he possesses of this world's goods, and divine pleasure or wrath is not to be inferred from the granting or withholding of worldly provisions. God gives to the righteous and the wicked alike, and withholds from both the righteous and the wicked. But what lies beyond this is what truly matters. For he gives to test and withholds to test, and the true measure is the outcome of that test. However, man, when his heart is devoid of faith, fails to grasp the wisdom behind giving and withholding, or the true values in God's scale. But when his heart is filled with faith, he connects with the divine and understands what lies beyond. The trivial gains of this world lose their weight in his estimation, and he awakens to the reality that lies beyond the trial, working for the true reward in both ease and hardship. He finds peace in God's decree in both states, and knows his worth in God's scale, not according to these hollow, superficial values. The Qur'an was addressing in Makkah people, like those found in every age of Jahiliyyah, disconnected from a realm higher than the earth, broader in scope, people whose thoughts about their sustainer were as shallow as their perceptions of wealth and poverty, who valued people on earth by nothing more than money and status. For them, wealth and power were everything, and there was no measure beyond these. Hence, their greed for wealth was immense, and their love for it overwhelming, leading to insatiable avarice and unyielding miserliness. It is in this context that the Qur'an exposes their inner realities and declares that this greed and miserliness are the root causes of their failure to grasp the meaning of trial behind the giving and withholding of provisions. Nay, but you do not honour the orphan, nor do you encourage one another to feed the needy. And you devour inheritance with greed and consume wealth with intense love. No, the matter is not as the faithless human imagines. The expansion of provision is not a sign of honor with God, nor is the restriction of it a sign of disgrace and neglect. The truth is that you fail to uphold the duty of giving, and you do not fulfill the rights of wealth. You do not honor the orphan, the little one who lost his protector and provider with the loss of his father. You do not encourage one another to feed the needy, the quiet soul who does not ask, but is in need. This neglect of mutual encouragement to feed the needy is condemned, as it hints at the necessity of collective responsibility within the community to guide toward duty and common good, a hallmark of Islam. Indeed, you fail to understand the meaning of trial, and thus you do not strive for success in it by honoring the orphan and encouraging one another to feed the needy. On the contrary, you devour inheritance with greedy, voracious consumption, and you love wealth with an excessive, overpowering love that leaves no room in your hearts for generosity or honor toward those in need of care and nourishment. Islam was confronting in Makkah, as we have mentioned, a situation of relentless pursuit of wealth by all means, which hardened hearts and made them cold. The weakness of orphans, especially the females among them, was a temptation for many to seize their wealth in various ways, especially related to inheritance, as has been explained in various sections of the Shadows. The love of wealth and its accumulation through usury and other means was a prominent feature of the pre-Islamic society in Makkah, a characteristic of every age of Jahiliyyah even to this day. In these verses, in addition to exposing their true inner state, there is also condemnation of this reality and a deterrence from it, represented in the repeated use of the word nay, as well as in the structure and rhythm of the expression, which captures the intensity and violence of their greed. And you devour inheritance with greed and consume wealth with intense love. At this point, after revealing their deplorable state and their mistaken understanding of the trial of giving and withholding, comes the dreadful threat of the day of judgment and its reality, following the trial and its outcome, in a strong and forceful rhythm. No! When the earth is pounded to dust and crushed, and your sustainer and the angels come, rank upon rank, and hell is brought forth on that day man will remember, but what good to him will be the remembrance? He will say, "Oh, I wish I had sent something ahead for my life." So on that day none will punish as he punishes, and none will bind as he binds. The crushing of the earth, the smashing of its landmarks and its levelling, this is one of the cosmic upheavals that will occur on the day of judgment. As for the coming of your sustainer and the angels, rank upon rank, this is a matter beyond our earthly understanding, but we feel the majesty and awe behind the expression. Likewise, the bringing forth of hell, we understand from this its nearness to them, the nearness of the tormentors to it, and that is sufficient. As for the reality of what will happen and how it will happen, it belongs to the hidden knowledge of God, reserved for his appointed time. What emerges from these verses through their piercing music and powerful imagery is a scene that makes hearts tremble and eyes bow in humility. The earth is crushed to dust. The mighty, the majestic appears, taking charge of judgment and decision, while the angels stand in ranks. Then hell is brought forth, ready and waiting. On that day man will remember, the very man who was heedless of the wisdom behind the trial of giving and withholding, who devoured inheritance with greed and loved wealth with an excessive love, who did not honor the orphan or encourage others to feed the needy, who transgressed and spread corruption. On that day he will remember. He will remember the truth and take heed from what he sees. But what good will it do him? What good is there in remembrance when it is too late, when the opportunity has passed in the world of deeds? And when the full truth dawns upon him, he will say, "Oh, I wish I had sent something ahead for my life." Ah, how he wishes he had prepared something for this life, this true life, which alone deserves the name of life, which alone merits preparation and provision. Oh, how he wishes! A wish filled with evident regret, which is the most painful thing left to a man in the hereafter. Then, after the piercing regret and the lost wishes, their fate is depicted. On that day no one shall punish as he punishes, and no one shall bind as he binds. It is none other than God, the Almighty, the Compeller, who metes out a punishment unmatched by any other, who binds with a binding that none can equal. The punishment and the binding by God, as detailed elsewhere in the Qur'an, are portrayed here with unparalleled uniqueness, beyond the grasp of human understanding, far removed from any earthly torment or fetter. This divine retribution is set in contrast to the tyranny of the oppressors, symbolized by the people of Ad, Thamud and Pharaoh, who spread corruption upon the earth, tormenting and chaining others. Yet here is your sustainer, O prophet, O believer, who shall punish and bind those who once tormented and bound others. But what a difference between their punishment and his, between their fetters and his. The might of creation is nothing compared to the might of the Creator. So let the oppressors do as they will, for they shall be punished and bound in ways beyond imagination or conjecture. In the midst of this terrifying calamity, this punishment and binding that defy all comprehension, a voice calls out to the faithful soul from the highest realms, O tranquil soul, return to your sustainer, well-pleased and well-pleasing. Enter among my servants and enter my paradise, thus with tenderness and closeness, O tranquil soul, addressing it with intimacy and honour, O tranquil soul, with praise and reassurance, O soul at peace with its sustainer, at peace on its path, at peace with the divine decree in both ease and hardship, in expansion and contraction, in withholding and giving. A soul that neither doubts nor deviates, that does not falter on its journey, that does not tremble in the face of the dreadful terror. And so the verses continue, enveloping the entire scene with security, contentment, and tranquility. The gentle, soothing rhythm of the passage hovers over the scene with love, intimacy, and peace. Indeed, it is paradise with its fragrant breath of serenity, revealed through these verses, and upon them shines the majestic, radiant countenance of the Most Merciful.